Ladies and gentlemen, the ACC has finally officially dropped the 2023 schedule for your Florida State Seminoles football team, and Dave and I are here to talk about it on today's edition of Locked On Seminoles. Dave, let's ride.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition of Locked On Seminoles. What's up, everybody? It's your boy Drake here, and today in the stream yard, I got Mr. David Wise. Davey, what's going on, my guy?
Drake, there is snow on the ground outside. I am in the heat of winter right now. It's kind of an opposite, but it is true, and it is true, Drake, that the schedule is out, which means real football to talk about. It almost feels like maybe we're not 7 months away from kickoff, right?
Why would you say there's 7 months away from kickoff? But before we get into that, folks, we want to thank our title sponsor for today's show, and that is our friends over at FanDuel, our new sponsor for actually the Locked On Seminoles podcast. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook app Locked On. Make every moment more by visiting FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. But Dave, let's get started with the schedule.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to do it. There's probably 4 games per segment. So we're going to start all obviously with the first 4 games of the season, go to the next 4, and the last 4. Does that sound good to you?
Yep.
All right. So obviously we already know we have the LSU opener in Orlando over at Camping World Stadium. I think most of us actually are going to be at that game. Unfortunately, I can't go because I have a wedding that weekend. And folks, please don't make your friends get married during the Labor Day weekend. I'm just kidding. Kind of. But then you got the Southern Miss Golden Eagles that follow up. They've come down to Tallahassee. That's a game where we've talked about a little bit that unless you have basically a Frank Gore Jr., having like a Dalvin Cook-like game along with the
bowl game moment. Exactly what he did in the bowl game.
Yeah, exactly. So we do with the bowl game, then you should be fine with that. But now this is where people I kind of think are kind of either confused or kind of upset, but I don't see it as that upsetting. You play Boston College, but you play them early up in Boston, so it's not going to be as cold. But then you end off the month of September with Clemson before bye. So I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about having LSU and Clemson in the first month of the season? Because obviously they're your 2 toughest opponents to have that early.
Okay. So let me start here. I need to address a more global question, I think, which is people kind of freaked out when the schedule dropped. And yes, this is one of the issues people are mad about, like LSU and Clemson within a month of each other. Those games aren't that close together. That's not a big deal that we get LSU and Clemson within the same month. Like if it was the same weeks, I would understand, but it feels like we're in a good spot right now. Where now our fans are having to, and when I say our fans, I mean Florida State fans, not necessarily fans of our podcast, are just looking for something to be mad about. Because right now there's not a lot to be mad about. And this schedule, I hate to tell you, this schedule doesn't not do us any favors. And the first third of the schedule doesn't not do us any favors. I actually like that before Clemson, we play. So right after LSU, we play Southern Miss. That's good. Just everybody relax after that game. We're going to play Southern Miss. We're going to win that game. And then we go to Boston College. I know it's an away game, and we're going to play Clemson away after that. That kind of sucks, but that's going to happen. You're going to play away games in college football. Coming off that Boston College game, that's kind of a good thing. Like I expect Boston College to be a pretty easy win. So not that you're going to be practicing for Clemson or anything, when you're prepping for Boston College, but that's about as easy, I think, of a lead into Clemson as you're going to get. And here's the kicker. You want to get Clemson as early as possible. Clemson is starting fresh with Cade Klubnik at quarterback. They're going to lose a lot of guys to the draft as they have the last few years. And you saw that kind of take a little bit of an effect finally on Clemson's performance on the field. So I want to catch them early when they haven't figured everything out yet, because they have enough talent there that when they figure it out, they're going to be harder to beat. That's not when we get them.
Catching them early, I think, is the key point to this, and I think you're right about that. Because not only K. Klubnik could be a very good quarterback, but
Maybe.
maybe, but last year he played like any, I think, 18-year-old true freshman would, being thrown to Power Five level at a top tier conference. And to me, that's kind of what the issue was. But not only that, they also have to acclimate and learn the new scheme, or even if Dabo is allowing a new scheme to be implemented by their new offensive coordinator, and that's Garrett Riley. As you're saying, they lost a lot on defense. They're bringing back some key pieces, but not like Brian Bresee. He's gone. I think KJ Henry. I think the kid is also gone as well. And it's to me, and offensively, like besides Will Shipley, is there anyone on that team except for maybe Brenningstool, a tight end, that you're actually kind of not like worried about? Maybe, but I don't think it's you're like, oh, that's a kid that we have to mark up actually for each and every single time that they got the ball in offense. So to me, with this Clemson game, I understand people are upset that you travel, you only have one home game in the first month. In my personal opinion, if you look at the schedule, like the only people that should be mad about the home games are local businesses, because that does suck. Because most of the home games that we have this year aren't that great. But also, you can't blame the ACC for scheduling Clemson in the first month, because you already had 2 games already scheduled, and that's the LSU game. Sorry, 3. No, 4. The LSU game, the Southern Miss game, North Alabama, and Florida. Those 4 games were scheduled. Only had 8 scheduled more games basically for that. So that's kind of the problem too there. But to me, with Clemson being at the end of the month, then you have the bye week, and that's kind of where I think it's actually it's not the best lead in the schedule, but the schedule on the back half, it's a whole lot easier. And we'll get to that in the next 2 segments.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is what I really like about the placement of the Clemson game is I do think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. We're going to talk through this again now that there's an actual schedule. But I mentioned that I think we're gonna beat LSU. I'm not really. I mean, I'm worried about that game like anybody else is, but I feel good about that game. If in the off chance LSU, which by the way is now higher than us in the transfer portal rankings because they've been crushing it too, that's going to be a good team. If they happen to beat us, and when that can happen, hate to tell you guys, the Clemson game gives us a little bit of a chance for redemption. I think in the national landscape, like in other words we said if you were to go out and lose to LSU week 1, could you rebound from that and still make the playoffs? Well, if you come out of that Clemson game 3-1 with a win over what I'm imagining will be a top 5 ranked Clemson team in that game, I will probably be ranked top 15. They'll be top 5. That'll shoot us right back into the top 10 of the rankings if we beat Clemson. And I think it puts the season right on schedule for a push to win the ACC and enter the playoff.
Exactly. And also, people forget that, in my personal opinion, when it comes to people rating these teams, you get penalized a lot more the later you
Yeah,
lose. To
right.
If you lose, people forget what you do in the month of September, because a lot of people are like, oh, either A, it's really early, and B, it's like, oh, they're still trying to find themselves and learn themselves and see actually what kind of team this is. So if you end up 3-1 out of that month, I mean, that's like beating LSU or Clemson. That's You're going to have at least one win against a potential top 10 opponent. Because I think with FSU, we'll be ranked around maybe 11, 12, maybe even 10. LSU, I wouldn't be surprised if they're ranked ahead of us simply because they're an SEC team. And if we win that game, top 10 win, beat Clemson, that's going to be a top 10 win too. So to me, listen, we either be 3-1, 4-0, as long as we don't lose to both of them. And even if we lose to both of them, we have the back half of the schedule to basically not. We have a little room for error, but it's not ideal. You're actually able to move forward. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, if we lose both those games, we're not going to the playoff or anything like that. But I there's no chance for losing both those
No,
games. Like
I don't think so. I think you take one of the two. I think this team has shown that they're actually able to, keep up with top tier teams
I
after this past season.
anyways, Drake, I feel very good about the first third of this schedule as you could expect. I don't mind getting 2 top 5 teams, the 2 toughest teams on our schedule out of the way early, because you're right. What you do early matters most. You split those games and you're looking at you're going to be looking at favored in every game the rest of the way that Florida State plays unless something catastrophic were to happen. So, you're going to be in the driver's seat. You're going to control your own destiny to the ACC championship and the college football playoff. And that is uncharted territory for this team over the last several years. So, that is something fans should be very happy about, especially because we're going to get to obviously the rest of these games, but like I said, you feel very good about them. Control your business first third of the season. That's what's going to matter.
That is what's going to matter. Also is also a fun time day. By the way, speaking of that,
What's that?
That's our friends over at FanDuel, folks. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're really excited about our new sportsman partner because we're locked on. They're #1 in the sports book in America. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features to make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no sweat first bet. You get up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Now, folks, my personal favorite bet for the Kansas City Chiefs game is going to be the Kansas Chiefs. Well, as you can tell, us other things going to win is the Chiefs at +1.5 against the Eagles. I do like Jalen Hurts. I think he's a great quarterback, but most importantly, we need to bring on Dave, the Fade Dave segment of the week of the millennium of the year. Dave, Chiefs +1.5, Eagles -1.5. Really quickly here, please let the folks know where you're riding so they can go away from you and bet the other side.
Drake, it's not very often that you find a complete fraud in the Super Bowl, but that's what the Eagles are. They suck. Jalen Hurts sucks. That's all going to get exposed within the next, let's call it 24 months. Call it 2 years. You're going to figure that he's not even going to be in the league. He'll be in like Canada or something. Yeah, Chiefs are going to win by 30. This is not going to be a fun game to watch. You're going to be able to shut it off by halftime and, get a nice early night of sleep. I don't know, maybe bake some cookies, something like that.
Okay, I'm not going to respond to that because that does not require a response. So join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon because folks, make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Okay, Dave, we're back. We're rock and rolling here on Locked On Seminoles, and want to thank each and every single one of you for making us your first listen each and every single day. And now, Dave, let's go back. Let's go to the middle four, or because I know middle late is kind of still sensitive to a lot of people around here. We have the bye week after Clemson, but then we have Virginia Tech coming down to Tallahassee, Syracuse coming down to Tallahassee, Duke coming down to Tallahassee, Duke coming to
Duke's dope.
Doak. Yep, and you have Wake with the away game over at Wake. So you have 3 straight home games after the bye. Granted, they're not great teams, but it seems to me here this is where you can probably, hopefully, if you are 3-1, you head into the bye week, off the Clemson loss, or 3-1 off the Clemson win. You can feel like you can rally off 1, 2, 3, 4 straight wins right there, right?
Yeah. This does set very nicely up for the control your destiny part of the schedule because, like I said, leave that first 3 games 3-1. I mean, obviously you want to be 4-0, but if you leave that 3 games 3-1 or those 4 games 3-1, you feel very good about your chances of being 7-1 after this stretch. Those first 3 games are home games: Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Duke, all at home. I like that we get Duke at home because I mean a lot of people are thinking Duke's going to be good. Again, I need to see more than just 1 year of Mike Elko making Duke look completely not crappy to buy in that they're going to be a competitive team for us to play. I know. I know. There's reasons to think they might be better than crappy. I got to see more to believe it. But anyways, that week game, that's not scary anymore. I bless you, Drake. On mute. Wow, nice. Um, that's just not a scary game anymore. You take Sam Hartman, take the heart man out of that team, and yeah, that's not gonna look pretty. If Sam Hartman had gone down with an injury last year, that team would have won like 1 game. Like truthfully, that defense is scary bad. So yeah, I'm sure we're gonna hear from our friends Cam and all those other fans over at Wake about how wrong I am, but that's not going to happen. We're gonna crush that team. So each of those games individually, there's not like a huge fear of loss, which means there's room for error, which means there's room for growth. I think, especially for the younger players during that part of the schedule, especially with 3 of those games being at home. Really, really, really like the way that sets up to end the first 8 games of the season 7-1.
No, I completely agree with that, mainly because one, Virginia Tech is a very bad football team.
Yeah.
I feel like they have a really good head coach in Brent Pry, but you saw that their quarterback play, whether it be Graham Wells or I forgot the other kid's name, it was just all over the place, kind of like their accuracy. It wasn't a good team or a good player helming the offense. Defensively, they were decent. Shout out to Chris Marr, former linebackers coach here, now defensive coordinator at Virginia Tech. Now, Syracuse, Garrett Strader is still there, but Sean Tucker is gone. But more importantly, the former offensive coordinator that actually made Garrett Strader look good is gone. And folks, that's important because he was the offensive coordinator for Virginia the year before where Brendan Armstrong was, in my personal opinion, a top 3 quarterback for the conference. And now he's over at NC State, which thankfully we don't play NC State this year. And we also don't play Louisville this year. 2 teams that, quite frankly, could be dark horses or sleeper picks to actually be in the ACC conference title game instead of Clemson or ourselves. That's a hot pick. Now, Duke, I know it's the Duke. I know they're the basketball school, but Mike Elko is a really damn good football coach. I do think he gets the most out of his players. I think, like I said before, this is the game where it's going to be closer than a lot of people want it to be, simply because they are Duke. And I know David's going to be doing the smirking thing. I'm not even looking at. I'm not going to look at the schedule. It is a good team. I'm not saying we lose this game. I'm just simply saying don't overlook them because, quite frankly, Mike Norvell and company, when they overlook someone in the past, it hasn't done a good job for them. And then lastly, with Wake Forest, Sam Hartman is gone. However, I do think Mitch Griffiths, the backup quarterback they have there, and actually might be the starter, has been there for 3 years. Now, we saw him command the offense against VMI. I forget the other team. Granted, yes, it is VMI, the Virginia Military Institute. I didn't know that they actually had a football team until I saw that game. But he knows how to run the offense, and quite frankly, I think Dave Clawson likes him a little bit more than Sam Hartman, in my personal opinion. But I still think we beat Wake by 14, 21 points because that defense did lose some key pieces, especially Rondo Bothroyd, defensive end, that basically was baptizing, I think, Darius Washington against us. That's a team that, quite frankly, we should be 4-0 in this middle stretch before we actually have to travel over to Pitt and then the Miami game, which we'll talk about in the next segment.
Yeah, if Dave Clawson likes any quarterback on that roster better than Sam Hartman, I have some prime real estate in the middle of the Arctic Ocean to sell him. But yeah, these are.
You never wanted a winter home with some some igloos, some penguins out your front door. Come on now, that'd be dope.
I'm not going to respond.
I'll mute myself on that one.
Not going to respond to that or any implication that Wake has anything remotely near the talent at quarterback that they had at Sam Hartman right now. It ain't there. That game is. Sam Hartman might have been the most valuable player in all of college football last year, in the sense that if you take him off of that Wake team, a Wake team that, if you go look at the advanced stats last year, was 34th. That 34th was solely attributable to Sam Hartman and A.T. Perry. Take Sam Hartman off that team, and that team shoots down into the 80s, which is right where Virginia Tech kind of is, like in that range. Like, again, I don't think Wake's going to be necessarily that bad, but that's not a game that worries me anymore. So yeah, look at Duke. Duke last year, Drake, where do you think they ranked in terms of advanced stats overall as a team?
Probably like 75, maybe 81.
No, they were 44, but like that's their best case scenario. I'm not here to tell you Duke's one of the worst teams in the ACC or anything like that. What I am here to tell you is look what happened to Michigan State this year. They're coming off a huge season under a new head coach. And what did they do? They win 5-7.
Difference though.
It's not
a lot. No, it is a massive difference because remember Michigan State took in like 15 transfers and they all left, and that was the big drop off. They didn't have a Kenneth Walker III that could mask the entire efficiency of the offense.
Maybe, or it was a fluke. What happened year one?
That was year two.
Or excuse me, the prior year. It could be a fluke. That's an equally reasonable probability. And Duke could be a fluke. That's all I'm saying. Duke could be a fluke.
Well, Duke does rhyme with fluke, so that kind of would track with you. But now that's a better analysis than what you just did. I think Duke and fluke, they rhyme. That'd be better analysis. But Dave, you know what isn't a fluke?
What's that?
The delicious, nutritious bars from our friends over at Built.com, aka the Built Bar. Are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat or the calories? Then you got to get a Built Bar. As you know, Dave is the cookie dough connoisseur. Your boy is the Cherry Barcia Casanova. As always, folks, if you don't like the 2 flavors, there are 18 other delicious flavors to choose from because, folks, they're delicious, they're nutritious, they're only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. So head over to Built.com today. Use promo code Locked On LOCKEDON to get a 15% bonus off your first order. Or more importantly, head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a Built Bar because you can pick up either a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or one of Dave's favorites, get the puffs because the puffs are delicious. Please, folks, Built.com, promo code Locked On LOCKEDON Let's get healthy today. All right, Dave. I'm gonna hand the ball off to you now, as is tradition.
Yep.
Into this show. Let's take us home with this last four. Pitt. We're at Pitt. We have Miami coming in town. Then we have North Alabama Lions, aka go UNA, traveling to Tallahassee, and then we end up in the swamp with Florida. But Dave, please take us away.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. I think a lot of people wish we had gotten Miami earlier. That seems to be the feedback that I saw most from our fans online. Um, I I don't think it matters. I think it's funny because the Florida and the Miami games are opposites to me in that respect, which is to say, I think the longer you wait to play Florida, the more things they can and will get worked out. I think the longer you give Miami to try to figure things out, the more they might, self-destruct. Look at what happened to Miami over this last season. Um, they were bad both halves of the season, but the first half they went 3-3. The second half they went 2-4. They didn't get better. They arguably and in reality got worse. I don't care when we play them. I'm happy to let Mario Cristobal keep either refusing to make adjustments or make the wrong adjustments because he's not a very good head coach. And that is, I don't know what four people left are sitting at home like believing otherwise. I mean, it has to be the four people that graduated from the University of Miami and are fans of that school. But that's just such a non-scary game that now we're through the control your destiny part of the schedule, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's these are not a lot of these are not cupcake games necessarily towards the end of the schedule, although arguably Miami might be by the time we play them. Pitt is going to probably be another tough game. That program has now gotten itself to where it doesn't necessarily have to do like a complete full rebuild. I don't think.
Oh, I think they're worse than Duke, but that's a personal opinion. I don't think
I-
they're a good
They,
team.
they might be, but like they're not like a Virginia Tech is what I'm getting at. Like
Okay.
they've definitely obviously upped their football game the last few years, and it's I still think that's going to be another game that you should win by more than a touchdown. So like it's not like it's concerning or anything, but coming off that control your destiny part, you get to do it again with this last four, obviously, because if you're 7-1 going into Pitt, you're going to be favored in that game by 14 points. And that's not an unreasonable outcome to think that that's going to happen. Then you go to Miami. Um,
No, Mike comes to us. Well,
Miami, or
actually,
sorry,
I
they
was
come
saying,
to
you always gotta say that anyways too, because remember we own Doak South. Remember that we
right.
we are we are the landlords for the Hard Rock Stadium down here in Miami Gardens.
Doesn't matter where the game's played. They still have the same crappy coaches there, same players that aren't being coached there. So that's that's not a worrisome game to me. It's funny because between the Miami and Florida game, you can ask me the same question on two different days, and I might give you a different answer as to which of those two teams I think will be worse. Because I do think Florida will get better, just because their coaching appears to be somewhat appreciably better than Miami's. But that's not saying a lot. So I I think you have a better than coin flip chance of getting out of these four games with 4-0 record and that putting you at 11-1. This is the part of the schedule which, for ACC championship game purposes, I think won't matter as much because you obviously have two out of conference games. But if you were to say, let's say we were 11-0 going into Florida and just completely ate crap and, shot ourselves in the foot and lost that game, right? 11-1, you get a chance for redemption because you're going to go play Clemson again in the ACC championship game for the second time. And if that means you've already beaten them once. So you beat Clemson twice. I think even though that would be a late loss, I think you can overcome that and still be right in the playoff picture. Because they're going to want to put an ACC champion in that game, a team that's beat a probably top 10 Clemson twice, and otherwise would have beaten LSU and would have beaten Miami. And that's an impressive resume. And so I think there's margin for error, depending on what you do the first part of the schedule with that last quadrant. And I think it looks scarier on paper because of what these teams used to be or have been recently, like Pitt, like Miami, like Florida. Those three teams are not good now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget. Like I think this is the definition of name syndrome with these
Mhm.
teams. Maybe it's, it's a brand confusion. I think probably would be a way to kind of also put it too. We see Pittsburgh. Like, listen, Pitt's not a good team. I know they just landed Phil Dracovic, but we all know the main reason why basically Jordan Addison left was that Mark Whipple didn't want to throw the ball down. Sorry, Pat Narduzzi went out and said that he doesn't want to throw the ball that much. He complained about throwing the ball too much, and he had Kenny Pickett, who was a first round quarterback, and Jordan Addison, number one receiver in the country, on his team. And so, and also people forget defensively, they lose players like a Kalijah Kancey, who will actually be playing on Sundays in the NFL. The next game that you have against Miami, I think this is the year where we see a lot of the freshmen play. Like, how we saw Mike Norvell had a lot of the young kids play. We were the youngest roster in the country per stars and everything else. I think Miami's going to go through the same thing. The problem with that is when you're playing a lot with youth, you're also playing with a lot more mistakes. It's similar to when an attorney hires an associate attorney. You're going to take a lot of lumps when it comes to work and everything else. But also, it's kind of like it's a learning curve that's going to happen for that team. Then in North Alabama, they're showing up for a check. Like that's they're
Yeah.
showing up for a check, and that's going to basically. I'm not even going to talk more about that game. And then with Florida, they don't have a quarterback. I don't give a damn who Graham Mertz is. That kid is not good. I'm sorry.
Bad.
He was good in 2020, and that was the year that 2020. I was like, oh, Graham Mertz, that kid's gonna be a stud. 2 years later, that kid's not a stud. That kid's not a very good quarterback. And offensively, that's what we want to ask. And also on the offensive line, they've lost like 3 starters. 2 of them are going to be NFL. 2 more of them are going to the transfer portal. So they lost. So they're going to have a fully new offensive line. Now, granted, they landed the number 1 tackle, I think, in the transfer portal, I think, from Baylor. But overall, these are 4 teams that, quite frankly, I'm not scared of. So I think most importantly, like you're saying, that first 4-game stretch, it is important to start off, 3-1 at the bare minimum. But if you're 4-0, the way it sets up right now, I don't think you can complain because the ACC right now isn't that good of a Power 5 conference. We've complained about all the coastal getting all the good teams. We have a very coastal heavy section this year, and we should be able to run through it with no excuses. And quite frankly, I think that we will with the team that we have and the coach that we have.
Yeah, again, now that we've done this exercise, I just don't understand anybody being upset about this schedule. Like, what would you change? And in fact, comment this please specifically. What would you change about this schedule? Would you would you want to flip Virginia Tech with Miami? Um, uh, maybe. I don't know if I want to play. I know it would be separated by a bye week, but I don't know that I'd rather play Clemson and Miami back to back. I don't know. I feel like for the first time in years, and you conspiracy theorists out there are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. Feels like for the first time in years, the ACC did not completely try to screw us with the schedule. And I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that Florida State is being projected to be on the main national stage. And when we are, that makes the ACC more money. And that's good for business, baby. Um, yeah, that's something the ACC would do, but guess what? When we're the benefactors of that, and all we have to do to be the benefactors of that is just not suck, and which we
Yeah,
don't.
Yeah, the ACC wants College Game Day in the Week 4 matchup, and the best way to get College Game Day to FSU and also Clemson is to have them as early as possible. Now, granted, it's not a perfect schedule. I can agree with that. It's not perfect. Would I like Miami earlier? Sure. Me personally, I like Miami at the end of October, October 31st. So you flip Wake. I don't like how Miami is right next to Florida because the 2 rivalry games almost back to back, kind of back to back because North Alabama. But simply put, this is a pretty decent schedule. And this is a lot more favorable to us than in recent years past. Now, granted, the bar was in hell when it came to that, but to me, I think overall, you can complain about the home games because the home games particularly aren't that great. If you're a local business owner, I kind of also agree you don't have you don't have a true like fun home game until October 7th because no one wants to really go to see Southern Miss Golden Eagles. But other than that, I really don't think you can find too much to complain about. And honestly, folks, we hope you don't have too much to complain about today's episode. Dave, please take us home for today.
Yes, thank you everybody for listening and making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. We're going to be coming at you a little more consistently each day. We're sorry that we've had to miss some episodes with work and personal life, as you probably experience yourself. But again, thank you for listening. For the podcast, find us anywhere you find your podcast: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google Play, all the good places. For the YouTube, give the video a like if you would, please. It literally takes 2 seconds, and we'd really appreciate it. Also, if you could subscribe to the channel, also takes 2 seconds. Hit the little uh, notification, hit the little ding, the little bell, turn on your notifications, and little banner or something that Jake's pointing to. Loves doing that. It'll let you know when our episodes drop. And here's the important part for me. Leave us a comment. What I want to know from you is, we already know we're going to play Miami, Florida, LSU, Clemson. Like, we know that those 4 games. The other 8 games, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult, how difficult do you think those other 8 games are based on where they're placed in the schedule, like collectively? Because it doesn't feel like it's any more than a 3 to me. I want to know what you think.
And folks, as always, this was Drake, and that was Dave, and we'll see y'all next time on Locked On Seminoles. Take care, everybody.
Go Noles.